Buenos días. This is DJ Morena Libre.
Good morning, everybody. This is DJ JC. Happy Friday, everyone.
Yeah, I hope you're having your coffee because it's been quite the morning already.
It really has.
And we have a guest.
Yes.
El que se llama nuestro productor, pero pues no lo veo.
He does things from afar.
Remote.
Remote, yeah.
Remote
He's still
work.
working remote. But he's in the studio today. We're so excited to have him join us.
I'm going to have to give you a hard time.
I know you are. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm glad you all are here this morning. Hope you're enjoying your coffee, tea, or, well, that's about it. I'm just more of a coffee person. But, you got to be nice to everybody else who doesn't drink coffee.
Yes. I'm one of those that doesn't drink coffie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
But ask him what he does drink.
Okay. What do you drink?
I we were talking off the radio last week that for as much as I try, the one thing that I cannot give up is the soda. I cannot, especially with a heavy meal or just, I feel like I need to have soda.
There is a really we're going to get a little bit into food. We're just starting the conversation. So
Yes.
if you're joining us, we are three exhausted academics in the studio in Bronzeville on La Hora Feminista, the Feminist Hour at Vaquero Radio.
Vaquero Radio, yes.
Okay.
And we do thank everybody that's joining us today.
But
new listeners and everybody else.
Yeah.
But supporting the show.
But back to the Coke. Okay.
Okay, let's hear it.
No,
We're not going to get away from that.
No, you're not going to get away from it.
All right.
But just to be clear, it's the one you drink, not the other one. Okay?
Yeah, Coke from Coca-Cola, the company.
Soda, Pepsi.
Yes,
Pepsi,
yes.
UTRGV, Pepsi.
So, we're Gen Xers, right? So the lore behind Coke was that it had Coke, right? And that's what made it so addicting.
Yeah.
But really what we have found out through research is that it's actually the sugar that's addicting.
It is the sugar, yes. And I have tried. I honestly have tried, but that's the one thing that I just have a hard time giving up. The dark soda.
Have you tried?
Yes, I have tried.
Oh, you told me.
Yes,
you
I
did try
gave it up for
once.
Lent. I was talking about that last year. I gave it up for Lent, and then I accidentally grabbed the soda, and I was hooked again. Honestly, I honestly have tried giving it up, but
No, no más no.
don't drink alcohol. I don't drink coffee.
Pero con la pura
La
azúcar.
Coke.
Con eso tienes.
So,
You're not going to get away with it.
I know.
It's
I
like
think that's
you're-
one of the first things that we talked about and spoke about when we met, that we were talking about this show, was the soda. And,
The soda's a big problem
It is.
between, and today we're going to be talking about patriarchy. So I think I was thinking last night, this is already, next week we're going to be starting with guest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have some really great guests lined up.
We do. So I was thinking, this is going to be then part 3 of our conversation.
Tenuously about the Barbie movie.
Well, yeah. But, I didn't think that I was really reluctant in watching it. Really, I really was. And then now I'm thinking, now I'm talking too much about it.
And that was what it was intended for. I saw Time magazine yesterday on the newsstand.
Oh, you did?
And at HEB, and it has Barbie on the cover.
And now I'm going to go watch Oppenheimer, or I'm going to watch it at some point, because I need to change the conversation a little bit into nuclear weapons or,
Destruction.
mass destruction. No, what are they? Weapons of mass destruction.
Yes. So this will probably be the last time we do talk about Barbie.
Which the patriarchy is one of them.
Oh, well, there you go. So it all ties in.
Yep.
So the whole Barbie is going to be the theme this whole semester. It'll phase out. But it will. It will. But I honestly, you know what? Now that we have Juan here,
Yes.
I want to hear his take also on the movie and what he thought about the themes and different things, because I was told, and we're not going to talk about this again. They never really answered the question. Hopefully last week I did
I hope by
a
the
better
end of
job.
You know what? That's going to be your homework. So I hope by the end of the semester
my
you're
goodness.
able to
Okay.
answer the question.
Okay. But I am very interested in hearing Juan's perspective. So I'm glad that he's here. I'm glad that now he's on the hot seat about what he has to say about it. But I did want to mention that today is the last day of summer.
Yes.
Today's the last day of summer.
Last official day,
Tomorrow at 1:50 a.m. Central Standard Time, we convert to fall.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
y empieza el otoño.
And even then, walking if you're, I don't know if you felt, or in my case, running over here, I was running late for the studio, but
Esas
there was a
juntas.
little bit, there was a little bit of a breeze that was nice. So I don't know if you guys felt it.
Yeah, I did. But I've been feeling it. It's been a slight.
Well, I mean, I don't know if not sweating profusely when you're walking, you consider that nice and cool, but no, it's still hot.
It is Juan. It is.
Tomorrow,
I agree.
What time did you say it's supposed to be?
It's 1:50 a.m.
1:50 a.m. You know, if you go outside, there's not going to be no leaves
No change.
falling, no color of green to brown and orange.
To orange, yeah.
So, I'm sorry. I mean, I grew up in the valley, and I'm back in the valley, but you can never tell me there's summer, 2 days of winter, and then back to summer. And that's it.
But you know what? I learned something. My perspective changed quite radically when, like, a few weeks ago. I was at as you all know, well, you all know, but the audience might not know that I participate in a community garden, and it's here in Bronzeville, and the community garden's been there for over a decade, but I met what do you call it? I met another participant from another community garden, and she's a master gardener. Okay, so she told me, she's like, it's because our having experienced winters, right? Because we lived in Utah for how many? 12 years?
12 years, yeah.
So having experienced winters, I could relate with what she said. She said the summers here in Bronzeville, or here in the Gulf, it's these are our winters. So you can't do anything in terms of just even like activity, because when you're in the snow, your activity diminishes unless you can afford skis, right? But even those are like, but you don't do much. You go sleighing, you go sledding, right?
Exactly. You mean you get to enjoy the outdoors. Here, you go outside. And
You could ride a bike if you wanted to.
You run the risk of dying in the heat.
You can
don't
go to
really
the
die,
beach.
And what are you going to do in the beach? Sweat even more? Come on.
Because for as much as we want the sun, we're still gonna have these tarps, and we're gonna set up tents and everything
Exactly, yeah.
to be out
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah, and then if you don't get a 3rd-degree burn from the sand as you're walking to the water.
Get to the- I know, right? Hauling all your stuff. Oh
And
my
apparently
goodness,
this
yeah.
summer, if you actually went into the water, it was like going into a nice warm bath. It didn't even cool you off.
I know, right? Yeah.
Climate change. Welcome to climate change. Okay, so patriarchy. We're gonna classes in session, right?
Yeah.
So last week we started talking about patriarchy, right? And a la bell hooks, right? So it's not all definitions are equal of patriarchy in academia, but the one she brings out, right? She calls it a social disease, right? This life-threatening social disease. So you, Joel, want to hear what Juan,
Yes. I do.
right? Okay, so tell me, Juan, share.
Well, first of all, I want to ask: was this a movie that you were interested in from the get-go, or was this something that you, like me, were like, no, you know what? It's not something that I want to watch, or were you thinking, okay, I want to see this for what this is about?
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I wanted to see the movie. I didn't want to go see it in the theater, right? And mainly it wasn't because now it costs you your firstborn child to be able to see a movie, but it's more. I didn't want to be around all the Barbieites, people would dress up and go, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but but it was just I wanted to be able to, in a sense, see the movie, not just be there for the entertainment, even though that's what it is, right? So I was gonna wait either till it came out on streaming, one of the streams that we pay for, or just wait till it kind of fizzled down and then go see the matinee or something. But yeah, it was a movie I wanted to see. I mean, I know the director.
Yes.
I mean, and I know that she's in her her work that she's done, right? Previous films and TV shows. she's always trying to bring in that that feminist lens into her work. And so for me, I wanted to see, okay, how far is she gonna take that lens, right? Because I mean, there's people who say, this is a feminist movie or this is that, this and that, but but then you go and you kind of, well, at least as an academic and someone who's not very well versed, but versed in patriarchy and all these issues, and feminists and women of color feminism. Um, sometimes they fall short. So I just wanted to see, okay, how far are they going to take this feminism? And I was talking actually yesterday. I teach a Mexican American Studies class, but at the Edinburgh campus, and we're talking about race and privilege and white privilege, right? And I brought up the movie, and I told them how that that you all were having this conversation, and but I told them how last week's show, right, that you kind of came up and saying that you're like you got text from your spouse, from your kids, your friends, that you didn't answer the question.
Well, I wouldn't. Let's. He's probably want to correct this. I don't know if it was all of those people. I just know it was his wife. Don't exaggerate.
People that listen to the show, and I did hear it. I did hear it that you got to dance around. Well, I mean, yes, I heard it from multiple people that I never really answered the question. That I kind of danced around it. So, yes, maybe by the end of the term, I'll have an answer.
Yeah.
But you're right, and that's interesting that you're bringing that up. Did you told your class that I hadn't answered the question, right? And that's great because looking back, I still probably haven't answered the question. So for those people that are listening, and wondering, okay, what is the reason why he hasn't answered? Maybe something's holding him back. Maybe he doesn't know enough. Those are great things that we're talking about and discussing.
But let's remind the readers what the question was, because we keep talking about the question.
Okay, yes,
being
the question.
Answered,
for those people that are listening for the first time, you're probably wondering, what was that question that was asked?
Yes.
And so the question that was posed to me was, did I like the movie? And I said, I didn't. But when asked a follow-up question of why didn't I like the movie, that's where things become a little muddled in that I cannot answer it. So I'm very curious when I'm as to what your students were saying, both male, female, if there was any conversation about that, about why maybe I'm not answering the question.
Yeah. No, and I mean, and they did. I mean, they actually asked me like if I had seen it, right? And I said yes. I went to go see it. And I told them, I went with Sylvia, and then we also went on La Morena. And then we went with another friend who are a couple also who were we all had gotten into the whole the summer thing of the Barbenheimer kind of theme. That was going
That's
on.
right. Yes.
And so I mean we didn't, like Sylvia said, we didn't get to see Oppenheimer because they took it off of the theaters. But but we went to see it, and when the movie ended, right, we kind of came out and we kind of thought, probably like everybody else, right, it's like what we liked about the movie, what we didn't, but it was more like the aesthetics of the movie, right?
Yes.
Like, or what they were showing and stuff like that. But it wasn't until we were walking out of the theater, and that's when, of course, La Doctora had to ask her, be the Doctora. So, what did you all think about the movie? Right? But it was,
at a deeper level.
But she's like.
But I'm really curious.
No, but she was like, but not just as again, not just what did you like about the movie? No, what did you think about the movie? And the thing is that we, our friend, were, his wife, Dulce, she was like, well, she said what she liked about it. She saw the themes of the feminists on there, right? And then and me and our friend Edgar, we were kind of walking behind them, right? And we were also kind of talking about it, but we weren't really talking about what we thought about the movie or what we liked about the movie. We were just kind of talking about more if some of the, I guess I know it was kind of a musical, so if the dance or the dancing went a little bit too long,
Oh.
but
Okay.
so stuff like that. But but the other thing was also that we but we really didn't get into the conversation, right? But of course, Sylvia also kind of through it in our phase that as men we didn't answer the question for her either, right? So
Y'all are it's because you're avoiding the conversation.
yeah, no, and no, but the thing is that
No, I'm just
and the thing is that I mean technically as men, and I'm gonna generalize men, right? And I'm including myself in it
or as a category.
as a category, right? Yes, I think we are avoiding the question. Or answering that question because the thing is, like I said, I was talking with my students yesterday, and one of my students who's they are a transgendered individual, and they were asking me, they asked me, well, what did you think of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, and I was teaching them about privilege and whiteness and stuff like that, and so one of the things that that I told them was that, well, for me, part of the reason that the category of men does not, we don't, they're not talking about or going deeper into the movie. I go, it's because, yes, it is a feminist movie, and we know who the director was. But what I was pleasantly surprised about the movie is how she made patriarchy be actually at the forefront of everything that was happening in the movie,
Yes.
right? And so I think, right, that it, as we were kind of talking about it too, right, is I think that is the fact that Ken, right, felt like he was like he was not an individual, like he did not exist in Barbie Land, right? He was a prop, right? Because it's like, because even I think in one of the when they went to the real world, right, and I think they met up with America Ferrera and her daughter. I think their daughter was like even said like Ken is an accessory of Barbie, because it's always Barbie and Ken.
Okay.
So it's like Barbie's dream house, Barbie's car, right? Barbie's Ken.
Barbies can, yeah.
Right. And the thing is that if you look at the characters, right, even Barbie's Ken comes in different shades and in different sizes, right? And so
Different
and
ethnicities. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And so for me, so that's why, so that that was for me that was a more powerful thing, right? Was the fact that patriarchy was right there in the screen, right? And for men, right, it's like, and like I said, I'm gonna generalize everyone every male who categorizes themselves as a heterosexual male, right? I think that when they walked out of that movie, they realized that it's no longer in the shadows. The patriarchy is no longer in the shadows. It's actually being put out there. But kind of going with DJ Jay-Z,
JC.
here, and his not necessarily avoiding the question, right, or answering the question, but it's more of that the fact that we're not taught, right? Because like I told my class, it's like everything that we do from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep has been ingrained into us by this system, right? And the system was created, by white men.
And it's multiple systems, right?
Yeah.
But if we're talking about patriarchy, yes.
Yeah, and so so for me, it's one of these things where even if we wanted to have a conversation, and again, I'm going categorically heterosexual male, we wouldn't even. I think that's the reason why I say we don't know how to have the conversation, because it's like with masculinity, right? That is something that is not part of our conversation ever. Again, when we're taught either pink or blue, sports, or no sports.
Well, just the category itself, right?
Yes.
Boy, girl, it's binary.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday in preparation for this show, about those things, about roles, about and after the movie, I wanted to see what people thought, just reviews. And one of the reviews that I found was this one: Barbie triggers heated discussion over patriarchy and feminism in China. And there was a quote here that, according to the journalist, and I'm quoting, Any man who hates and slanders the movie, she wrote, is narrow-minded and in the thralls of male chauvinism. So, how am I supposed to respond to that? When asked on air what I think about the movie. And I'm not saying that was the case.
No.
But I really like what you stated, Juan. I think that's the reason maybe that I'm kind of hesitant, or maybe it's because it's not something that we discuss. And I know we talked about that last week a little bit. It's not something that when we get together, like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, no, what are we talking about? Fantasy football. What are we talking about? Work. What are we discussing? All these different things. That is not a topic of conversation. And you're right. It was brought to the forefront in this movie. And, I'm not going to go back on what I said that I didn't like the movie. For what it was. I just thought, for me, they were trying to cram too much into just one movie.
Yeah, but I think it goes to the fact that, patriarchy is a massive, I just heard this word, it just reminded me of this, but it's a mammoth. It's everywhere, and it's invisible. Because we're not taught to identify it. We're not taught to detect it. We don't even give it a name until we're old enough, right? And if we come across it somehow. But we don't even learn the word, right? So if you don't, and that's what Bell Hooks talks about in the article that we are reading right now, by her understanding patriarchy. It's that we're not. We don't even develop a language for it. We just accept it as something normal and natural. And that's what makes it even more dangerous, right? Because then we don't learn how to question it.
We just accept it.
We just accept it as it is.
And keep passing it down.
And keep passing it down. And the thing about patriarchy is that it's not a wonderful system that you pass down as a legacy or as an inheritance. No. Maybe as a legacy, but not as an inheritance, right? Or something wonderful. No, you're not passing down beautiful wisdom. No, you're passing down violence. Violence. That is at the heart and at the core of patriarchy.
And I'll admit that prior to last year when we started talking about these themes and patriarchy, we touched a little bit on some of these things. Bell Hooks last year when we started the show. It wasn't something that I knew about, but when they're discussing it in the Barbie movie and they mentioned the word, it came back to me that that's something. But again, in its form, I didn't know enough about it last term, and other than just some of the literature that you had shared with me on Bell Hooks and some of these different things. But yeah, it's front and center in that movie. It's front and center in the movie, and so when they talk about that, it's like, okay, this is where they're going with this.
It is. Patriarchy is Barbie's world. That is the essence of Barbie. Because if you even, and then you bring in capitalism, right? It's the Barbie world exists because capitalism exists.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So you can't separate one or the other. So feminism, what is, and that's what I was talking about. There are different strands of feminism. One of them being white feminism, right? And and there's a lot of research on this, where within feminist studies, where white feminism has actually worked against. Has been complicit to patriarchy in many ways, right? So it's a lot to dig in through, and a lot to discuss, right? But I think the conversation is, and Bell Hooks brings it up here as well. It's like it requires men and women to be talking.
Oh yes,
right. It requires everyone, and we have to separate too patriarchy from man, right, or from woman, and not separate in terms of like, oh, it doesn't exist. No. It's like we have to understand, and we have to conceptually think about it as a system, right? That we are all in, right? So men aren't. Yes, men perpetuated violence, right? Because they benefit within the system from it. But that doesn't exclude women from also perpetuating the same form of violence, right? And it also doesn't, and it's also, we shouldn't put all the burden on men to say, oh, well, it's your
It's
problem.
them, yeah.
You need to fix it. You know, it's going to take all of us to do it, all of us. But we have to recognize as a system, right? And that's why I think that's what I liked about the movie, where she brings in kind of like the Matrix. We're Gen Xers, so I'm sure the references.
Yeah, they went over some people's heads. The younger.
I think
crowds.
so. I think so. I heard somebody say, "Oh, I like the grandmother." I'm like, yeah, well, you have to know what that means,
Yeah.
right? Like the oracle. So yeah, it's I think bringing that element as showing how patriarchy is, right? Even the old lady is part of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
the thing is, I mean, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, even these younger generations. I mean, for what it's. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of them know about the Wizard of Oz, right? And I mean, it's also the whole thing,
Yeah.
pulling the curtain, right, and
The veil.
actually being able to see. But in the Wizard of Oz, I mean, that's how Dorothy found out that there really was no Wizard of Oz. There was some guy behind the curtain who was playing with all the knobs. Right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that's also interesting to me is the fact that, you're talking about how it's a system, right? That basically perpetuates this violence, perpetuates this complacency. But the other thing is also we also kind of have to look at is that you were talking about it's not just all on men, but and on women, but we also kind of have to look at those two words, man and woman,
Of course.
because those are the beginnings of patriarchy, right? It's like because then that excludes whoever doesn't fit into that
Binary.
binary, right? So I think that's also part of the like I said when I was talking with my students yesterday, and they were bringing up a lot of them were bringing up the issues, right? Because I asked them like what when you think of patriarchy, right? Like what comes to mind, right? And a lot of them were like none of them use the word violence, but they all use the word restrict, right? It's a restriction on what I can do. It's a restriction on where I can go. It's a restriction on what my identity is, right? And and I asked them like to give me examples, right? And like I said, my transgender students, they were like, well, it's a restriction on my identity, right? It's a restriction that I don't identify as the biological sex that I was born in, right? And how society still wants to restrict me from being able to be the individual I want to be, right? And another young lady was like saying that it's a restriction of, I'm coming to college, but somehow in the back of people's mind is, that whole I'm coming to college to find a husband, not to get an education, right? So it's that restriction of finishing a degree because you have to find a man first, so have to find someone to take care of you,
Yeah.
even though you can do it on your own. So so for me so it's starting the conversation, but like you're saying, right, it's not just on the men, it's not just on the women. It has to start with each other, with each group, right?
Yes.
Or how you identify, but because I think that when we try to have the conversation with each other, then it becomes that man you're
The man
you're a
hating.
man hater.
Yes.
You're that,
Yeah.
right? Instead of actually seeing and more like listening to what the other person is saying. So.
Interesting.
Interesting.
No, I mean it is. We were talking yesterday about roles, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this after the break, but our jobs, our professions, and the professions that we choose, and as a librarian, I was young, and I grew up here in Brownsville, and going to school, the only librarians that I saw were always women, from elementary and then middle school and then high school. And I started college and just thought, and this was an education for me too, was I started college and I thought everybody that worked at the library was a librarian, And so I start working at the library, and I'm educated in the fact that, master's degree in library and information sciences. And then I start seeing, oh, well, you know what? At the time when I started working at the library, there were more male librarians than there were female librarians. So it's like, okay, well, this is interesting. The fact that, I never knew, and I guess, thinking, never knew males could be librarians. Obviously, you could do anything.
Well, because
but
you grow up seeing
Yes.
primarily women
Yeah.
in those positions. Okay.
Exactly. And so I brought a statistic here that I was kind of curious yesterday in our conversation about, librarianship. And I found that according to the demographics here, there are over 80,000 librarians currently employed in the United States. 68.7 of all librarians are women, while 31.3% are men. So it is a profession that is, you have more females and more women within the profession. And so, like I said, growing up, I thought, oh, this is the norm, is women, are librarians.
Yeah.
And so also growing up, seeing a male nurse was also like, oh, wait a minute, no. Nurses are women,
Yeah.
And again, exposed to that. And I have a great friend of mine who is a nurse, and a wonderful nurse. And but growing up, again, to me, it was a shock to see, these men are doing these jobs that I thought could be only done and were being done only by women.
Yeah, and so this is when gendered, they become gendered, and we see gender as a verb, as a practice, right? Okay, so I'm gonna play a song. We have to take a little breather, okay?
Okay.
Restroom break or something.
It's been a wonderful conversation, though. So yeah.
I'll get
So
some soda.
I'm gonna play Flowers because I think Miley Cyrus, because I think she deserves to be
Okay,
heard
go for it. All right.
during this intermission. Here we go. We are back. That was Flowers by Miley Cyrus. I'm sorry, that song's good. Like, it just makes me want to dance. Again, I want to be a DJ for the rest of my life.
I agree.
Okay, so we're back. Are you okay with your...
Yeah, I'm just checking the microphone here. I was having some issues with it, but I think we're okay.
Okay. So, patriarchy and Barbie. And now we're going to start talking about work, right? And right? So what are some of the nuances within patriarchy, the particularities that we can start to unpack, right? And one of them is labor and how gendered labor is, right? Yeah, and you were talking about the librarian, about the category, because some of we've learned over time, right, that some of these professions have been iconic, right?
Yes.
And like the librarian is one. I mean, we can think of so many stereotypes around the librarian, right?
Hollywood's stereotypes and their
yeah.
version of what a librarian looks like and is supposed to be, and
Yeah, just like the secretary, right? Or the
nurse.
The nurse or the firefighter, right? And then we perpetuate these in schools.
Yeah.
Right? And schools are there. So schools are part of that, are unfortunately, right, are historically part of the socialization of patriarchy, right? Go ahead.
No, I was going to mention, even in Hollywood, and us thinking also, teachers were female. Teachers were female, but you get to college, and all the professors were male. With the jackets, with the little, yeah, exactly. And that's what we thought, So, okay, well, and then I don't know if, it has changed in Hollywood that now you see more professors, females in the professor role. I don't know. I can't think of a movie where.
Well, yeah, Indiana Jones. I mean, even though he's still Indiana Jones, his... Really, I felt like it was a passing on of the baton was for her, for his friend's daughter.
Yes, his
Right?
goddaughter, I believe.
Yeah, goddaughter.
Yeah, goddaughter.
But even then, there was some problems with the way that she was portrayed versus the way he has been portrayed throughout these decades, right? Because she was
Yes.
more conniving, she was less trustworthy, right? And women are not supposed to be you can't trust a woman, right? So yeah, like there's still stereotypical views of women, even when they're breaking off somewhat
Yes.
from these roles, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you watched it?
Yes, Indiana Jones.
Yes.
We talked at length last week that was a movie that I was sorely disappointed in. And if
Yeah.
you are a fan of Indiana Jones, sorry for my take on it, but that was one of the movies that I was looking forward to because I'm a big Harrison Ford fan and Indiana Jones fan, and this last one just didn't do it for me, you know. And I was going in there with high hopes, but as it progressed, I was thinking, please don't go there. Please don't go there. And they went there.
Wait, they went where? Where?
Well, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. I know spoilers, but
It's okay. It's been out already.
yeah,
Yanimoto.
the idea of them traveling back in time, I saw it coming. I'm like, please don't go there, please. But they went there. And it just took me out. But you're right. The female character, to me, again, I didn't like her because to me it was very different from maybe some of the other female characters in the past, you know, and that's just
Well,
what I
she
thought.
wasn't sexualized like the other ones, for one, right? Because then it would have been incestual, right? But then, but still, like she wasn't. The other ones weren't as rebellious as her in the past.
No, they were very, no, you're
you
right.
know?
You're
They
right.
were the damsel in distress that
Need-
Indy had to go save.
Save, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like, I mean, I saw the movie, and we took the kids to see it.
Yeah, we did.
Because, I mean, I grew up with all the
I know.
movies, and I honestly expected, I did expect what kind of, because I had seen I guess the different trailers that they had put out, and and I kind of suspected they were gonna do it, go do that, going back in the
Yeah,
past and stuff like that. But for me though, after I saw it, right, what I found interesting was kind of like with all the reviews that people had, you have of not necessarily the audience, but more like critics and stuff like that of films. But one of the things that I remember reading was that they were like that if, and this, and if, the critic was saying this movie would have been a kind of a full circle for Indiana Jones
Mm-hmm.
if they wouldn't have pushed the female character as the lead.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
If Indy would have stayed the lead character, then it would have been believable that they did the whole time travel.
Okay, that's an interesting take.
Because if you look at the like the one the previous one where where Sean Connery came out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, they went to the past because the Templar guards were there,
Yes.
right? And Jesus's cup was there, and so
Mm-hmm.
so it would have been it would have made it full circle, and it would have been believable because technically this archaeologist, world traveler, educated man, would have been able to find a way to do that time travel.
Yeah, and in every movie of Indiana Jones, there's always been a supernatural element. So I don't know
Yes.
why people were so upset with Part 4 where aliens came out. There's always been this supernatural element to these movies. But I don't know. I just don't think we were expecting it. But that's interesting about the female character being pointed out.
I think those people hadn't watched the other ones.
New generation. They went in there.
Yeah,
That was the first
they went
Indiana
in-
Jones movie that they had
They
seen.
didn't binge watch the other ones.
Exactly.
And again, I mean, and even though like this movie happened, I mean, it was probably like in the 50s now, right? Maybe.
I think it was 60s,
60s or
1960s.
so,
Yeah.
somewhere
Uh-huh.
around there. Even at that time, and this is probably right before the whole civil rights movement and the social movements started happening in the late 60s. But even during that time, right, like you were mentioning with who is educating people in the especially in in the university and higher education, is still men, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are still men who have all the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because going back like to the roles, right? Because yes, you could have a you have a librarian,
Mm-hmm.
and aside from Hollywood's representation, but just our own knowledge, like you are talking about, right? These are women,
Mm-hmm.
but here's one thing I've one question or something that's been kind of coming to me while you all were talking about these roles, right? When it comes to like a librarian, when it comes to a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, do we really see them as a person who creates knowledge, or do we see them more as a person who just hands me the knowledge that's already there?
I mean, they're the.
Uh,
I mean, that's an interesting. I think they're the keepers of the knowledge, and they're just kind of distributing it, spreading it to the others.
Yeah, but what I mean is more like, okay, if, it's like, okay, you have the librarian, right? And I mean, I know that to be a librarian, nowadays, definitely, I mean, you have to have at least a master's degree,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about when you were little, or even when you go to the library, right? Uh, I mean, if you ask someone, what does a librarian do? Right? They say, well, I ask them for this book, they go get it for me, and then that's it.
Exactly.
And, and so that's what I mean by they're not creators of knowledge. They're just the one, like you said, they're keepers of knowledge, but they're not seen as the one that actually can
Producing.
also produce
Yeah,
some
exactly.
kind of knowledge. Yeah. And with teachers, it's the same thing
same
because
thing.
a lot of things, with teachers are like, well, they don't really create knowledge. They're just going off of the book that they give them, and that a school board put together, and usually that school board is a bunch of men,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so again, right? So there's still this for me this view of, but they don't produce any kind of knowledge, or they don't create knowledge. All they do is pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah.
And so I think when it comes to patriarchy, that's for me. I always tell my students, that's like that's how. Until that gets broken down, until that gets changed, it's like, it's like this invisible cloud of what patriarchy and remnants of colonialism are still present, and they're going to be present.
So how do you two feel or think is there a path forward here? I'm talking in the local context right now. You can take it to the national or the global if you want. But do you think, are there any pathways for young men to be able to have these conversations? Are there any spaces? I mean, I think this movie is a great it's a great way of doing it, right?
Is.
But it would require, right? Like, how. I'm hoping it does spark conversation, but is it going to spark the conversation of, oh, this is patriarch? Yeah, exactly. So are there any pathways towards young men, or men in general, I guess, or, just having that conversation? I mean, and I should be specific, right? Like cisgendered men, right? Are there any pathways, any spaces out there or how do you see any solutions to this? And maybe not like the solution like, ya se va a arreglar el problema ahorita. I'm going to solve patriarchal's problems,
right now,
or like
by this weekend.
By this weekend.
We're all going to get together at Lucky Barrel. We're all going to get together at Lucky Barrel, and we're going to talk about patriarchy.
Yeah, over
It'll be
football.
solved. Yeah.
Over the Dallas Cowboys.
After the Cowboy game, we're going to talk about patriarchy.
Yeah. You're on a roll, so.
Yes. I don't know. I think forums like this, I think just open forums that, are sponsored by some entity where conversation can flow. Not arguments, but conversations. Not, no. I just constructive, conversation. And I don't know if that really got to the point of where you're asking me where this happens, but I think, and I'll pose it to you as a faculty member, is a university setting a place where something like this can begin?
Of course.
But guided by who? By themselves?
No, I mean, there's mentoring, right? That's why mentoring is important within the higher institution, because and then within the faculty, faculty have expertise.
Yes, I know.
Right, and we need to understand that they are that they can be, we can teach this, right? We can be able to have discussions. We are taught well, not everybody, but when we go through a graduate program, when we're trying to get our PhD, not everybody teaches. Mm-hmm. Okay? Not everybody has to work, teach, and go to school, right? So it just really varies. So, and it varies in the discipline. It varies in the department you are attending, right? So it depends on funding, right? So there's many faculty that go into their careers as junior faculty not knowing how to teach. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Not
yes.
ever given the tools on how to teach, right? So it's I understand at times when they don't understand how to they'll describe gender as part of the labor, right, or part of labor, but beyond that there's really no discussion, right? No critical discussion. So and I understand because we're not all taught the same way, right? And we don't all want to learn the same way either. So, but faculty are important in these conversations, right? Especially those that specialize in those fields, are key, really, to helping students understand these systems, right? And also creating open, like you said, open forums, open discussion, invite students so that we can start hearing a different conversation. We have to make it public. Because we have, and it's part of just having community education, inviting us. One thing I've noticed is that the community has questions, for in a nonprofit or some issue within the city council, right? And it's really hard to reach the university and invite faculty to go talk to them. It's not as easy as we think it is. Mm-hmm. So how can we start bridging, right, that dialogue between community and the university so that the people who are well prepared to have these conversations are out in the community having them.
Mentoring others.
And mentoring others, right, through that education. Yeah. Of course, yeah, we're key. Librarians are even more important, I think.
They are. What can I say? No,
everyone's important, but I think librarians, really, you sit, if you look at every great civilization, right? And I'm talking like major civilization, and that can be debunked too, right? But in terms of civilization, who we think of civilization, not the knowledge, this iconic,
yes,
it was at the core of it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If we look at, Aztecs, if we look at Incas, if we look at Mayans, we all had librarians, or what we now call librarians.
Yeah.
Right? So it play an important role within the academic institution or enterprise, really. Yeah. So I think you have a lot to do.
I do.
Te dejo tarea.
So by this time next week, there better be a community.
Yeah, I better organize some sort of community event.
It's as simple. It's as simple as putting bringing in some speakers to have a panel on patriarchy and how it impacts maybe municipalities, or how it impacts education, right? Or and then just bringing in people and just having a teach-in, right? And just invite students. Give food. If you give food,
oh yeah, you're gonna get people.
You're gonna get people, right? And that's just a matter of asking for some funds to, or collaborate with the departments of the faculty you're inviting, so that you can then get some funding to feed students, right? So that they can come in and enjoy the conversation. It's just creating these spaces.
So I'm curious, as both of you as faculty, when you start discussing some of these things in your classes, what are some of the questions that your students ask? What is it that they want to know that, you would think, oh, that's just general knowledge, but they really have a hard time understanding, or just are kind of questioning?
Well, for me, like I said, I started this conversation last week, but really got into it yesterday's class. But for me, what it is actually it's having them understand, or starting to understand or see how we live in this patriarchal world,
Okay.
right? Even if, again, even if we've had the movements, even if feminism, even if we had the Me Too movements, we've had the what is it, the pink hats, right? And everything happening. But I tell students, but the thing is that the system is still patriarchal, because if we go with reproductive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 50 years ago, it was put into law, right? And the way we're taught in school is that when something is law,
It's
then
word.
It's word, right? That's on there. It's something that people have to follow, right? That's the reason why we have speed limits, right, and all these other things. But the one thing that I tell students is that, but what you have to understand is that when this country was founded, right, but not necessarily, but when we were established, there was a set of rights, a bill of rights that was put together, and there was certainly only a certain amount of number in that bill of rights. I go, everything else that we consider law is an amendment.
Yeah.
And an amendment
Mm-hmm.
is just a sticky note
Mm-hmm.
that gets added to the
To that.
original piece, and you can just go and take that off.
Mm-hmm. That's
Right.
true.
And that's what we need to start to understand, is that, until we see that patriarchy and this, it's like I said, it's that shadow that's on everything. Until you start understanding that, then you'll be able to see, okay, again, how patriarchy has basically determined who I am, what I am, and what I'm going to be up to this point, right?
And the laws that have been established.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of the. So for me, that's one of the first things is having them try to understand that it's there.
Yeah.
And going back, so I want to wrap it up because, well, they're going to cut us off in a little bit, but also because I want to go back to Bell Hooks, and she calls it imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, right? So she is showing us, teaching us that patriarchy it's not alone, right? It's what is that called, the multi-pronged monster, right? Like an octopus in a way,
Yeah.
right? Of a system. So to start questioning and acknowledging and learning how to detect patriarchy, it's a huge start, right? Because then we can get into start talking about racism,
Oh, yes.
imperialism, right, and how the family is part of that empire building, right? And we can start talking about white supremacy and its violence, that comes with settler colonialism, right, where land is at the heart of that, right? So it gets really, really, really messy and
Entangled
and
with each other.
Yes. So we could spend all.
Yeah. And I just want to get kind of going along with that. I mean, if because one of the things I was like, well, what is, because people always say, well, what does patriarchy mean, right? But if you go with the actual literal definition, right, whoever you want to, either
The dictionary
or Oxford or whatever, but basically the literal meaning of the word patriarchy, right, is the rule of the father.
Yeah.
Right. It comes from a Greek word, right? But basically it just means the chief of a race. And so how you're talking about, and that's where the whole racism, sexism, or all the intersections that we, as some scholars kind of, talk about that. And again, the other thing that I tell my students is, think of yourself, because, not to make it too long, but we're teaching our children at home, but we're doing the periodic table.
Yeah.
And so, it's elements, and elements are made up of atoms.
Yeah.
I go, so picture yourself as that nucleus in the middle, and patriarchy and all these other isms that come with it are the electrons that basically pass around the main, the nucleus, but, and there's no way to get away from it. So you have to start
I like
recognizing
that.
all of
That's
those
a
things.
great way to teach science.
That's it, and so you have to recognize
And other
they're
concepts.
always going to be around you, and you just have to learn to identify them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay,
I like that one.
great point.
Good way to wrap the show up this Friday afternoon.
Yeah. So, okay, everyone, thank you for joining us. Class was definitely in session today. Thank you, Juan, for joining us today.
Thank you.
For being
Yes,
here.
as always, Juan, thank you so
I'm
much.
always here. Just I don't answer your phone.
Okay, sorry. It's just, this is a lot to multitask. So you can find us at Radio Feminista on Instagram. And our email is the Feminist Hour at gmail.com. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And if you want to contact us, please, you can do it through Instagram or through our email. And thank you. And we'll see you next week. We're going to have a guest. So please join us so that you can talk. We're going to be talking about intimate partner violence. So we're going to continue this conversation in a different form. Okay?
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. So thank you so very much for everybody that's joining us. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.